receive, to listen. So use your faculty of listening more than seeing. Listen. Listen rather than seeing more. Listen more. So my final point is this. If Jesus is going to be a substitute to take in voluntarily the punishment of everyone else on his behalf willingly, if we were to reject your God, our punishment will be eternal burning in hellfire. Someone to substitute my punishment on their shoulder has to take in the same punishment. So if Jesus was going to be a volunteer, he has to eternally burn on hellfire to take my punishment away, right? To be my substitute. Obviously, he hasn't done that. So he failed even on that regard. Would you like to explain how this is possible? I've explained already. I've already explained to you. Have you forgotten already? Were you not listening? Okay, what have you so far understood about my first point?
So your first point, I think it says, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was the fact that you're saying that Jesus was not sacrificed. Because it was injured.
Yes.
I want you to tell me where you think the sacrifice started. Because I remember in the Garden of Gethsemane, had he been injured then? And the Garden of Gethsemane was the point where you made the decision, not your will, but my will. So I think that's fine. Your second point was what?
No, because when you take someone to the altar, you have to have a perfect sin offering, not injured, not maimed, and so on. If Jesus is going to, if Jesus, what do you consider the altar as? You have the bigger problem because you have no altar, no sacrifice.
So in the Bible it talks about that you lay your life down as a living sacrifice. That's exactly what Jesus did. He asked the Father,
was he perfect?
Take this cup away from me. And he said, not my will, but yours. So at that moment he decided.
So he was on the cross, right?
Garden of Gethsemane.
But he wasn't dead there, was he?
I was very quiet when you said it.
I'm just clarifying. Because when you say someone is offered as a sacrifice, that means life is taken that point. In the Garden of Gethsemane, life is not taken away from him. He was on the cross, according to your belief. So, the altar was the cross. Was he injured when he was on the cross?
I don't know why you said the altar was the cross. What's your why you said the altar
Okay.
cross? Where you
How
getting
did
that
they
from?
sacrifice in the Old Testament times?
An altar was a very special place. God told them, he gave specific measurements for it, and we know it's called an altar. Can you show me anywhere where the cross is called the altar?
No, this is what you affirm,
No, I don't
not me.
affirm.
Okay,
I affirm
so,
that, excuse me, can I finish? I affirm
you asked me and then you are...
Fine. I affirm the Bible. Show me anywhere it says the cross is the altar.
No, I'm not saying cross is the altar. I'm saying you have no
So
altar.
if the cross is not the altar, what I say at the beginning stands.
What do you say?
Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said, not my will but yours.
But he wasn't dead there. Where was he dying? Where was he giving his life?
Where are you getting your standard of this is a sacrifice?
Because you said...
Let me finish. This is
I will
where-
clarify.
This is where the suffering must start.
I will
Where are you getting
clarify.
that from?
I will clarify. When you brought the issues of sacrifice and sacrificial system in the Old Testament times, they used to take this animal to the altar to be sacrificed. A perfect sacrifice is something that is not injured. This is the Old Testament law. If Jesus was going to be fulfilling some kind of sacrificial system in line with the Old Testament system, then he has to be perfect and he needs to be sacrificed on an altar. So you had no altar and you had no perfect sacrifice. You affirmed that he was a sacrifice. In what kind of sacrifice? According to the Old Testament. Don't you believe according to the Old
You
Testament?
do have to let me speak because I was very quiet when you spoke. I've asked you, where does it say the cross is the altar?
I didn't say the cross is the altar. You have no altar.
Again, I will say the decision to be sacrificed was made in the Garden of Gethsemane before all the suffering. So your point one is not valid. Remind me of your point two.
Okay, the point one you misunderstood. I'm not talking about when the decision was taken. I'm talking where did the sacrifice take place? Sacrifice means what? Not the decision.
You just don't want to accept my
Wait.
answer.
Okay, no. Are you saying the decision for him to die took place in the Garden of Gethsemane and not before he was sent to this earth?
Yeah, he made that decision way before, but then
Right.
he very, very clearly, he prayed again, and he said, Lord, if it be possible, take this cup away from me.
Why is he praying when he was supposed to be sacrificed?
Nevertheless,
Another problem. Problem number
You've
5.
interrupted me, this is very rude.
I'm just highlighting the problems.
Again, you've interrupted me. Nevertheless, not my will but yours.
So-
from there, therefore, then he decided to be a sacrifice. The issue is, you are making a big deal of when was the praise started, and you're saying the cross was an altar.
I'm not saying it.
You're saying.
No, I am not saying
What
it.
you said is.
I have affirmed so many times. I am not saying it. This is what you imply.
So tell me what you said, because what you said was.
Okay, let me tell you
No,
what.
no, what you said was he's not a perfect sacrifice because before he got to the cross, he had been whipped, he had suffered. Is that what you said?
Let me clarify. If someone was to be sacrificed according to the Old Testament law, a perfect sacrifice is one that is not maimed or injured. If Jesus is going to be a sacrifice according to that system, then you need to apply those conditions. The conditions are not injured. The conditions are it needs to be sacrificed on an altar. Look. If you believe that he's not a sacrifice according to the Old Testament system, then that's different.
You put some really funny conditions on.
So, how is he a sacrifice? Clarify.
Again, very, very simple. He became a sacrifice. He was a sacrifice for all time anyway, but he was a perfect sacrifice at the Garden of Gethsemane. You are saying that because he was injured before he got to the cross, he's not a perfect sacrifice. I don't see that anywhere in my Bible. You have to bring out a biblical source saying that because he was injured before he got to the cross, which you're saying is an altar, and the Bible never says the cross is an altar, that's not a perfect sacrifice.
You see,
You're wrong.
you see
You're incorrect on this.
what you, of course I'm correct for the following reasons. When the animal has not been brought to the altar, is the animal sacrificed?
Again, show me
Wait,
anywhere in the Bible where the cross
Please
is
don't interrupt.
described
It's
as
rude.
an altar.
It's rude to interrupt.
Thank
Can
you.
you remind him when he does it to me? then?
No, yeah, I did. You did it, so I said
Right.
yes.
So, when the animal is still in its wherever it is, not near the altar, is it sacrificed? No, it's not sacrificed. There may be a decision made which animal they're going to bring to the altar to get sacrificed. So, during the transit to the altar, the animal is not sacrificed. The moment the animal is put on the altar and is sacrificed, at that point you say, sacrifice has happened. If Jesus is on the way, on the transit from heaven to this earth, in your belief, and he is still in heaven, sacrifice hasn't happened. So sacrifice will happen when his life is taken away. So at what point did the life take away? God took it away from him, you believe? When he was on the cross, he said, he gave up his ghost, whatever, right? This is what you believe. So my point is your belief that he is a sacrifice like the Old Testament system of sacrifice? That system. If it is, then he hasn't met those conditions. He cannot be a perfect sacrifice. That was my first point. So go to address my second point.
No, I'll address your first point. You seem to.
But you failed to address it anyway. Address the second point.
Why didn't you stop him from interrupting me?
You two were debating between each other there.
Exactly. Exactly. Again, Mansur, Jesus said, not my will but yours, before that he was not injured. So the point of sacrifice starts then. What you need to do is you need to show me a biblical reference where the cross is an altar. That's all you need to do. Can you do it?
You see, to answer is this, brother. The conditions were a sacrifice happens on an altar
Whose conditions? Your
according to the Old Testament. Jesus had no altar where he was sacrificed, so the condition wasn't met. So he failed on two grounds. So my second point, please answer.
You know what? I think we've been good to time.
Until someone told me.
Number one, the cross is not described as an altar. Number two, can you find me a source where it says you can only sacrifice on an altar?
How did they sacrifice?
No, show me a source.
Hang on, before you ask
I've
me a
asked you
source.
a question.
No.
What do you mean before? I've
Before-
already asked.
When you
were
ask
the
me,
one who made the claim.
okay,
Can you back it
right.
up?
Yes, sure.
Good.
Now educate
With a source.
us on the sacrificial system according to the Old Testament law.
So you can't back it
Did
up.
they sacrifice willy-nilly anywhere, or did they have a special place where they
So you can't
sacrificed?
sack it.
I am asking you to educate us.
So you can't back it up. You're
Look,
the one who brought the
I am
claim.
simply requesting you to educate us.
What you're trying
What
to do.
was the system of sacrifice?
What you're trying
Did they sacrifice on an altar or not?
what you're trying to do is move the goalposts. Your initial claim was it's not a perfect sacrifice because by the time it
Do
got
you
to
know
the
how he was
cross-
sacrificed?
You keep interrupting me. It's very rude.
I'm not interrupting, I'm asking for clarification.
By the time it got to the cross, he was not perfect because he'd been injured, right? All I've said is, at the altar, you're saying that the cross is an altar. First of all,
I am not saying that. You keep on lying in front of me. I said every single moment, about 4 times probably now, that I am not saying it's an altar. You keep on saying, oh, you make cross an altar. What a liar in front of my face. Sorry, you can't say that. You can't say that. What I'm asking you, educate us, because we do not know
Can someone
how
tell us, because
was
you're taking- you're
how
taking way too much time.
how was the sacrificial system in operation in the Old Testament time? Did they sacrifice a lamb in an altar or not?
So first of all, you asked me 3 points.
Yes.
The first point, now you want to change and ask a 4th question. We're not going to do
No,
that.
no, this is not for point. The same point.
We're not going to do that.
He
Mansur.
was
You
injured.
said-
My first point was he was injured.
First of all, you said it's not a perfect sacrifice, but
Because?
before he got to the cross,
No, because he was injured.
yeah, before he got to the cross, he was injured, and then you said the conditions are that he has to be sacrificed on an altar. I simply asked you, where is the cross described as an altar?
I didn't say cross is an altar.
Where? No, stay with me. Stay
amazing
stay
how
with me.
you
And
twist the words.
And secondly, where in the Bible does it say sacrifices can only happen on an altar? What is an altar?
What I am asking you simply is this.
No, I asked you first.
No, you asked me first, and
I did ask
I am answering.
Good.
A
asked for a bigger
lamb,
source.
when that is slaughtered as a sacrifice, or a goat, is it sacrificed on the altar or not? If it's not, then you don't have to have an altar. I am asking you, a perfect sacrificial lamb in the Old Testament times, is it sacrificed on the altar?
I asked you
If you can answer that question, that there is no altar needed, it is solved. You don't need an altar.
I asked you for a biblical source.
In the Old Testament times, in Exodus, in Leviticus, where this is described, do we need an altar for sacrifice? If we don't, we don't.
I asked you for a biblical source.
I don't have a source.
Okay,
That's why I'm asking
thank
you.
So you don't have a source.
At the moment.
What do you mean at the moment? Find the source.
No, I'm not going to find the source. I'm going to ask you directly, because you know your Bible, don't
If
you?
you don't
So
know,
I am asking you, educate us.
If you don't know, just say you don't know.
Educate us.
Just say you don't know. I've said it again.
You know what
Jesus-
education means?
Stop, let me all to and fro.
Right.
Let me all to and fro.
Educate us. Do we need an altar or not,
If
according to
you-
the Old
if
Testament
you don't-
system?
If you don't know, then I'll tell you again. The Bible is absolutely clear that Jesus is the perfect sacrifice.
I didn't ask you that question.
No. but that's what
When
you
someone
said.
was sacrificed, when a lamb or a goat was sacrificed, were they sacrificed on an altar or not? If they are not, they don't have to be. I'm simply asking you to educate us. Do you know?
It's interesting.
Do you know?
It's interesting. Your first point is that he's not a perfect sacrifice.
Because he was injured.
Because he was injured.
That's my point.
Even though the Bible declares him to be the perfect sacrifice. So are you trying to say that?
Who claims? The Old Testament or the New Testament?
The New Testament has
No, the Old Testament says a perfect sacrifice is something that is not injured or maimed. So Jesus was injured, so he fulfills not that condition. He fails the fulfilling condition.
Exactly.
So,
my
according
first
to
point- my first
to
point
clarify
is
that,
this.
because he fails, now correct me. Do we need for a perfect sacrifice in the Old Testament system an uninjured animal?
Yeah.
So you said yes, Jesus was injured, so he fails that. Moving to my next point.
No. Did you hear me when I said Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said, "Not my will but yours." He said he's going to be the sacrifice in that statement, and he was.
How does that address the first point of an
Can you
injury?
stop interrupting me? It's so rude. Before
Why do you think it's rude when I'm asking for a clarification?
Because you're interrupting.
No, I'm asking for a clarification.
Because you don't let
Is
me
it
finish
wrong
my
to ask for a
thought.
clarification?
You don't let
If
me
you're
finish
interrupting,
my
yes.
thought.
No, is it wrong for a clarification?
If you're interrupting, yes.
The way you are speaking, I'm glad you're looking at me in the face.
No,
now.
do
That's nice of you.
you see what clarification I'm asking for? I am saying, I asked you
Maybe
before.
if you allow me
No,
to finish my sentence, you'll
Go
get
ahead.
the answer.
Tell me when you're finished.
You'll hear
When
the
you're
answer.
finished, tell me I'm finished.
When
You
Jesus
can.
said, I'll say it again, I've said it several times. When Jesus said, "Not my will but yours," he was saying that he's going to be the sacrifice. Was he injured at that point? No. So the issue is, when did the sacrifice start? Now Jesus, in the Bible it says that he was slain before the foundation of the earth. He has always been perfect. He came down perfect. He lived a perfect life. So he's always been the perfect sacrifice. If you want to argue this point, you're really going to have to find me a verse that says Jesus was not a perfect sacrifice. What you're doing is you're grasping at straws. You're not understanding what the Bible says, and you're trying to make contradictions where there's none.
Cheap words. When we talk about sacrifice, let's go back to the animal sacrificial system. When an animal is still on someone's house and they decide to sacrifice the animal, that animal is not sacrificed. According to your logic, the animal, because the decision is already made, is already sacrificed. But maybe at that point the animal was not injured. But subsequently, when the animal is taken to be slaughtered for sacrifice and is injured, is that a perfect sacrifice? The answer is no. That would not be considered a perfect sacrifice because